the IABA Brussels chapter, and today we wanted to give you more insights into a practical approach of agile analysis. First of all, I would like to thank our sponsor, which is Queso Services. And now I would like to introduce to you Trent Leopolds. He's a practicing business analyst who holds a Master of Science degree in Managerial Science, multiple certifications and credentials, including an airline pilot's license. Trent's experience includes serving in various executive roles for private and public government sectors, including as an advisor to 2 former US presidents and a US vice president. Trent actively participates in brain research with an American university and is a Who is Who member. In case you have further questions on the subject of today, we will make some time at the end of the presentation where Trent will be so kind to give you an answer. So in case you have any questions, please send them via the chat. And Trent, the floor is yours. Can you take over the screen?
Thank you, Christoph. Are you able to see the screen okay?
Yes, I can see the screen.
Fantastic. Okay. It is a privilege and a pleasure to be here with you all today, virtually via Zoom and by way of the IABA Brussels chapter. And I want to thank Christoph in particular for his excellent facilitation. We were talking just a few minutes ago before the presentation here today started about how courteous everybody is in the European Union. So I'm looking forward to a very educational experience with you today. We're going to have a giveaway at the end. So be sure and stay until the end so that you can have a chance to win the giveaway. And we're also going to have a lot of fun today, okay? Life is too short not to have a little bit of fun every day. And so we're going to have some fun today. We're actually going to be setting a record. It's going to be an experience that we're going to have here in just a little bit where we are going to set a record here on the Zoom meeting. I encourage you to get the supplemental material that will be provided as a part of this presentation, as well as the presentation itself, and use this presentation and the supplemental material in your practice, expand on it, learn from it, and share this within the business analyst community at large to help make our practice better for everyone. There is a lot of material that we're going to cover today. And so, as Christoph mentioned, if you will, please hold your questions to the end. I promise to answer each and every question. And in the event I do not get to your question today, you're welcome to reach me. My email address is shown here. And I also, Christoph will be providing me with a list of the questions that we do not get to. And I will be sure and answer all of the questions. Okay, so let's take a look here at what we're going to do today. Let's look at our overview. And we're going to take a look at what constitutes excellence. We're going to be taking a look at recent scientific research concerning how the human brain works. We're going to look at process models associated with business analysis and business analysis for excellence in particular. And we're also going to be looking at core techniques for imparting excellence to agile business analysis. Now, you may notice that I use the term agile. The term agile is also used. They both basically mean the same thing. It just depends on who you're speaking with, whether they use the term agile or agile. So before we get started here, we need a couple of volunteers to help out very briefly here at the beginning. And so if you could just raise your hand in the chat. And Christoph, if you could, if you're able to, unmute maybe a couple of these volunteers, or if not, we can go with the chat for the volunteers. If you would just please, someone, we need 2 volunteers. If 2 people could just raise their hand in the chat, And I see Bert has, as well as Mohammed. So Christoph, if you're able to unmute Bert, that would be great. If not, we can just have Bert respond to us in the chat.
They should be able
hello.
to unmute themselves. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Hi,
Hello.
Bert.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I am fine. Nice to have you there. It is a very good situation that I have you today regarding our awesome session. I would like to be the volunteer you are looking for. So please put me in the full picture about our volunteers vacancy.
Okay, and Mohammed, welcome to you as well. I see
Yes.
you're offering to be a volunteer. Are you off of mute, Mohammed?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
I am
for
from
being
Egypt.
A volunteer. Okay, so Bert, what
Yes.
I would like for you to do, if you will please tell us a number. How many participants do we have, first of all, Christoph? Do we know about how many participants are on the call here right now?
For the moment, we have 52 participants.
52. Okay, so Bert, if you will please, think of a number between 1 and 52 and tell Christoph what the number is. You can just announce the number here so everybody can hear. That's fine.
Okay, for everyone to hear. The number I will pick is 37.
37. Okay, Christoph, I know you made a note of that number, and I'm going to make a note of the number here too, number 37. All right, Bert, that number will become very important for us a little bit later on in the presentation. So thank you for volunteering. Now, Mohammed, I need you to also do something as a volunteer, if you will, please. I want to talk about what is excellence. Okay, so just stay with me for a minute, Mohammed. When I put this presentation together, I decided, well, you know, it might be worthwhile to figure out what exactly is excellence. We have an idea what we think excellence is, but how is excellence defined? So I looked at Wikipedia, and we found out that based on Wikipedia's definition, excellence is something that continuously moves. It's a continuously moving target. Okay, so Mohammed, if you would please tell me what time it is.
Time now is 7:15 as per Egypt Cairo local time, 7:14 p.m.
Okay, Mohammed tells me, did you say 7:14 or 7:15?
7:15 exactly as per Egypt.
7:15 exactly. Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Mohammed says that it's 7:15 exactly. Well, Mohammed, I really appreciate you telling me what time it is, but actually you're not able to tell me what time it is as much as you might want to, because here's why. By the time that you look at the time and it processes through your brain and it comes out of your mouth and it goes over the internet into my ears and into my mind, guess what? The time has changed. Maybe
Yes.
only by a few seconds, but it is impossible for you to tell me exactly what time it is, because it takes time for you to tell me what time it is. So this is what I use as an illustration to show how excellence is a continuously moving target. Okay, Mohammed, thank you so much for volunteering and your participation here in the webinar today and helping us to understand that excellence is a continuously moving target. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about information overload here. A study done by IBM and Xerox prior to 2020 shows the effect that too much information has on people. Basically, information overload results in 53% of people believing that information is less than useful. Less than half of the information they receive is useful. 42% of the people use the wrong information at least once a week. And 28% of a typical workday is wasted by interruptions caused by unnecessary information. Now, here in Dallas, Texas, in the United States, we have two major airports. One is known as the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, and the other one is known as Dallas Love Field, which is near downtown Dallas. And they're both major airports, but they're actually 30 miles away from each other. And I was a business analyst at the Dallas Love Field Airport for a while, and I learned that on average, in the airport terminal every day, there are at least 3 people that believe that they are at the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport when in fact they are actually at the Dallas Love Field Airport. They're all loaded with information and they don't even know where they're at. This happens a lot. Gallup conducted a survey prior to 2020. In fact, they've been conducting this same survey for the past 20 years, since 2000. And they found out that 67% of the workforce is disengaged in their jobs. 18% of the workforce is actually actively disengaged in their jobs, working against the organization where they are working and creating a toxic environment. And that means that only 15% of the workforce is engaged in their jobs. This trend started in about 2020 and has been increasing every year up until last year. And interestingly enough, the Gallup survey, which has just come out a couple of months ago in February, early March, shows that, believe it or not, engagement is rising slightly during 2020. And perhaps this has to do with the fact that people are away from the interruptions and working away from interruptions and are able to be more focused. Well, the first survey we have, and please go to your Menti.com and answer this survey. During the past year, is your ability to engage and focus with work better, worse, or about the same compared to prior years? I'm interested in what your experience has been over the past years. Have you been able to focus better, worse, or about the same compared to prior years? So if you will, go to Menti and enter the code there, 736-50922, and submit your response. We'll look at the responses a little bit later on in the presentation. So some of you may be familiar with Daniel Goldman. Daniel Goldman has written several books. He's a researcher on human psychology and human thinking processes. And he wrote a book a few years ago concerning what drives excellence. How is excellence actually achieved? And he determined that there are 3 types of focus that people have: inner focus, outer focus, and other focus. And this book of Daniel Goldman is actually what we're going to be giving away at the end of the presentation today to one of the participants here on this webinar. As part of Goldman's research, he looked at what we call the flow zone, where people's performance and their attention are in the flow. It's where they are doing their optimal work. And all professional athletes tend to have this flow area. In fact, high-performing basketball players claim that when they get into this flow state, they are actually able to see the ball going into the net before they ever take their shot. This is also something that's related by a lot of professional golfers, such as Tiger Woods. He claims that when he makes a putt, he actually visualizes the ball going into the hole during this flow state. Well, interestingly enough, during Goldman's research, a neuroscientist was performing a very complex surgical operation on a human's brain in the surgery suite. And like most surgeons, he was in his flow state. And by the way, something that is interesting to me anyway about this flow state is that it generally is the case that when someone is in their flow state, they are not verbalizing things. They may be listening, they may be seeing, they may be feeling kinesthetically, but they are not moving their mouth when they are in a flow state. And think about that in your own experience, maybe in your job as a business analyst. When you are in the middle of analyzing something or going through one of the techniques that we find in the Babok and working in the processes, do you find that maybe when you're in that flow state, it's a time when you're really not moving your mouth. It's more of something that's happening mentally in your mind. Well, anyway, back to the surgery suite. This neurosurgeon was doing a complex surgery on a person's brain, and the ceiling tiles started falling off of the ceiling in the surgery suite. The nurses and the other medical personnel were very concerned about this, and it caused them cause for alarm about what was going on with the ceiling tiles falling down. Well, the surgeon just kept right on going, right through his surgery. After the surgery was over, someone asked him, "Doctor, did you even notice that the ceiling tiles were falling?" And his answer was, "No, are you kidding me? The ceiling was coming down during the surgery." He was in that flow state where he was so focused and concentrated on what he was doing that there was nothing else around that was competing for his attention. And notice that this flow state happens in an area where our attention is kind of at the minimal. As we move up on the high end of the spectrum, we become frazzled. And if our attention is too low, we become bored. So I encourage everyone to be cognizant of this in their day-to-day activities and think about, am I in a flow state? Do I need to be in a flow state? And how can I get to that flow state? And oftentimes we find that getting to that flow state actually means paying less attention instead of paying more attention. So what we see here on the screen is a functional magnetic resonance imaging machine. This machine, there are several of them in the world, and in fact, I'm engaged in some brain research. I was just in one of these machines about 2 weeks ago, where they take a picture of your brain while it's thinking, as we see over on the right-hand side there, to view what happens with your thought processes in real time. The blood flow changes in your brain. The oxygen levels are redirected in your brain depending on thinking and what parts of your brain need to be activated for certain thinking processes. So this gentleman, his name is George Miller. He's deceased now, but in the 1950s, he conducted research at both Harvard and Princeton universities to determine how many things someone could focus on simultaneously. And what he learned was that people can focus on no more than about 7 subjects simultaneously, plus or minus 2. So some people could maybe focus on 5 things, and some people could focus on 9 things. But more than that, it was really impossible for a human being to focus on more than about 7 subjects at any one time. And then recently, Clara Moskowitz with the National Aeronautics and Space Administration in the United States did research in this functional MRI here, where she's shown, to determine for astronauts how many things could they think about simultaneously. And this is important for an astronaut to know. They're in a rocket that's going at hundreds of miles an hour, thousands of miles an hour, and we don't want to overload the astronauts with too many tasks. So it was important for NASA to learn how many things an astronaut can think about at one time. And the number that Clara came up with in her research shows that people can simultaneously focus on no more than 4 subjects at any one given time. So the next question in the Mentimeter is, how often do you find yourself multitasking or thinking about too many things? And so if you could just answer that, and we'll take a look at the responses a little bit later. I would be interested in whether you yourself think that maybe sometimes you find yourself trying to think about too many things. And when you try to think about too many things, you can't think about anything very effectively. Carolyn Treisman was a lifelong researcher at Princeton University, and she recently died just a couple of years ago. But as a result of her lifelong research, she was awarded a special commendation by the United States government. And what she determined, based on her entire life's research, is that how we deploy our attention actually determines what we see. And folks, this is really key to understand this. And I'm gonna show you this here a little bit more in just a minute. But how we deploy our attention determines what we see. we as business analysts really need to understand that. We have to understand that the stakeholders, the people that we are working with concerning their business processes, are deploying their attention in a certain way, and the way that they deploy their attention determines what they see. So here's an example. What's your conclusion here? How many sticks are here? Are there 4? Are there 3? What's your focus? Here's another example. Is this cat going up the stairs or down the stairs? Another example, this is the FedEx logo. And some of you may have seen this before, but if you look closely, between the E and the X, there is an arrow that is pointing to the right. And in the event that you have never seen this arrow before, guess what? Now that I have pointed this arrow out to you, you will never be able to look at this logo again without seeing that arrow, because this is now how your brain has been trained to be able to see that arrow. And here is the same FedEx logo in Russian. And notice the arrow here is pointing in the other direction. How about this? How many dots are on this screen here? Are the dots moving around? Are they actually moving on the screen, or are they moving in your mind? And then what about this logo? This is a logo that Christoph shared with me. Can you see the C or Carrefour in this logo? The C right in the middle. Can you see that C? And if you weren't able to see that C before and you can now, again, that's because I have mentioned to you that there is a C in this logo and you can see the C. How about this? This hand gesture means different things in different cultures. Different cultures have different focuses. In the United States, this symbol has taken on new meanings just in the last couple of years, and it means multiple things here in the United States, not just okay. I know we have some people from Brazil on the call today, and maybe they could attest to the fact that this means an insult in Brazil. Now, here's one last exercise for us to take a look at how our brain focuses. Just pick a card in your mind, any card you see in your mind, just pick that card. Doesn't matter which one, just pick it and get it in your mind. And now that card has disappeared. What about this? Is this a pound sign, a hashtag, a number sign, or something else? Up until, a few years ago, people really didn't know what a hashtag was. But now this is probably called a hashtag more so than it's called a tic-tac-toe or a pound sign. So again, how we focus determines what we see. All right, let's get now to a couple of definitions. We're going to look at definitions from the IIBA perspective and the PMI perspective here today. So business analysis is a practice of enabling change by defining needs and recommending solutions. That's the IIBA definition of business analysis. And the PMI definition is the set of activities performed to identify business needs, recommend relevant solutions, and elicit, document, and manage requirements. The definition of a requirement from the IIBA is a usable representation of a need, focusing on understanding what kind of value can be delivered when the requirement is fulfilled. And from the PMI, a requirement is a condition or capability required to be present in a product, service, or result to satisfy a contract or other formally imposed specification. Let's talk about a couple of definitions here. Predictive versus adaptive. Predictive means I'm going to do number 1, then I'm going to do number 2, then I'm going to do number 3, then I'm going to do number 4. Adaptive means I may do number 1, then I may do number 3, then I may come back and do number 1 again, and then I may do number 2, depending which way it's best suited for the objective. Agile and iterative means that We do things iteratively. We expand upon things. We may do a little piece of item number one first, and then we do another piece of item number one, and then we do a third piece of item number one until item number one is completely done. We iteratively do things, not everything all at once. And we progressively elaborate. We progressively expand and elaborate with Agile. Okay, let's take a look at Agile versus Waterfall. In Waterfall, the requirements that the business analyst is typically involved with are determined up front. In Agile, requirements are determined in an ongoing basis. And then one of the things that's very important for us to always remember, as a part of the Agile Manifesto, which was created in February 2001, respect and trust are two key tenets. So always remember to treat each other with respect and trust when you are imparting excellence through Agile Business Analysis for excellence. One of the key Agile concepts is to fail early. You want to fail. It's okay to fail in Agile. You want to fail early and often. And as the initiative progresses, the failure frequency actually lessens as the product development progresses. People and interactions are valued more than processes and tools, and relationships are vital in Agile. Here are some of the Agile methodologies. Disciplined Agile delivery is becoming, it seems anyway, much more popular than many of these other ones, but all of these have different techniques associated with them and different flavors associated with Agile. So what is Agile Business Analysis? From the IIBA extension to the Business Analysis Guide, Agile Business Analysis is ensuring the right information is available in the right level of detail at the right time so that the right product can be built. And we've got a couple of references here. The requirements lifecycle management includes assessing, analyzing, and gaining consensus on requirements changes. And the requirements analysis and design definition, also known as RAD, are the incremental and iterative activities from the concept to the solution. Okay, what does Agile mean? Okay, it means basically that as we go through these next several slides, what you see on the left is more important than what you see on the right. People and processes, people and interactions are more important than the processes and the tools. Working software is more important than comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration is more important than contract negotiation. Responding to change is more important and more valued than following a plan. Okay, at this point in the presentation now, we are going to actually, everyone on this call is going to be able to participate in setting a record. Okay, so if you will, wherever you're at, as much as you're able, if you will, please stand. You will please just stand up wherever you're at. And then on the count of two here, we're going to ask you to please clap your hands 3 times. Okay, so stand up, and on the count of 2, we're going to clap our hands all together 3 times. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, fantastic. Now you may be seated. This is standing up, helps us to keep the blood flowing. This is a presentation that's lasting roughly an hour, and it's the evening time for most of us. So this helps keep the blood flowing. And we also just now set a record. We have just now set the record for the first standing ovation via a Zoom meeting. Okay, let's look at the core management techniques. There are 7 of them: needs assessment, management planning, elicitation, analysis, monitoring and controlling, solution evaluation, and closure. And for some reason, my slide stopped advancing. There we go. Okay, today I'm going to show you 2 models for Agile Business Analysis. In this first model, note that the bidirectional arrow associated with requirements management planning. Also note that requirements monitoring and controlling happens throughout all of the other processes. With Agile Analysis for Excellence, as things happen iteratively and with progressive elaboration, excellence is continually imparted. And this will be part of the supplemental material that you will be able to access. Well, you will have access to this model. Here is another model, model number 2 for Agile Business Analysis. Note that in this model, the bidirectional arrows are everywhere throughout all of the processes. Continuous refinement, continuously imparting excellence in an agile way. So today we are going to examine in detail the first model, model number 1. And in this examination, we are looking at how business analysis for excellence can impart value at a company such as Godiva, a Belgian chocolate maker. Now, this is directly from Godiva's website, where they show that Agile is one of their 4 core values. By the way, just for the record, Christoph, our moderator today, educated me recently in the correct pronunciation of Godiva. Here in Texas, we pronounce this as Godiva. So in the event that I say Godiva, please remember that as we saw earlier, people see things differently, and it's important for business analysts to always remember this. Okay, so looking at the process model, the first process in the model is needs assessment. This is where the analyst employs techniques for determining goals, objectives, and opportunities for enhancing value. The current capabilities are discovered, and a definition of a desired future state is established. Now, since we know that excellence is a continuously moving target, we know that whatever is established as a desired future state will likely change at some point as excellence is pursued. For our example today, Godiva has a need for examining their distribution channel. And by the way, this is a very real need at Godiva. For years, they have offered their chocolates for sale at physical stores or retail outlets, particularly in the United States. However, in recent years, with the introduction of services such as Amazon, their sales from these stores has been declining. So here are some techniques that can be used during the needs assessment. Simply for purposes of our example today, let's choose the benchmarking technique. With the benchmarking technique, business analysis looks at how other organizations are responding to the challenges with their product distribution channels. Benchmarking identifies best practices, generates improvement ideas, and establishes an initial basis for measuring performance. Now, your supplemental material, which will be available to you, provides an explanation in more detail of all of these techniques. The next process in the model is management planning, also known as requirements engineering. This involves stakeholder analysis and engagement and developing the requirements management plan. Now, simply as a side note here, this term, requirements engineering, is being seen with more regularity. And in fact, the International Standards Organization, the ISO, and the IEEE are including this term requirements engineering in their standards work. An example of this is the standard referenced here, 24773-2, concerning blockchain. So the analyst for excellence engages in requirements engineering. Okay, so back now to the requirements engineering management plan. Here are some of the techniques, and again, your supplemental material has further descriptions of each technique. The plan describes how requirements activities will be planned and managed iteratively and progressively elaborated. Again, note the bidirectional arrow here in the model, which shows the agile nature of requirements management planning. As input is received from requirement solicitation, analysis, and solution evaluation, the requirements management plan is updated. Next process here in the model is elicitation, and this is where the reasons and requirements for seizing an opportunity are identified. Techniques for elicitation include facilitated workshops, focus groups, and observation, among the others that are shown here. So, for our example concerning the Godiva product distribution channels, one of the techniques for this example would be interviews with stakeholders for identifying capabilities and functions associated with directly shipping the Godiva chocolate, such as maintaining a temperature range during the shipping process to prevent the chocolates from melting, and of course, the associated functional requirements. For our example this evening with Godiva, focus groups with customers may also be beneficial. Decorative packaging is less important to customers or some customers, which could result in manufacturing cost savings and more efficient shipping. Often, focus groups result in finding and learning things previously unknown, which of course then results in updating the requirements management planning. Okay, so the next process in the model is requirements analysis, where the information is examined and synthesized. For example, clarifying, verifying, and validating the information. It's important here to remember that documenting is a part of the communicating associated with verifying and validating. Is what the person said what you heard or what they really meant? Did they see the cat going up the stairs when you saw the cat going down the stairs? Verify and validate during requirements analysis, and a component of this is documenting. As progressive elaboration happens, and you, as the analyst, help impart excellence, things will and should change as a part of the verifying and validating process, because this is, by its nature, part of the refining process that results in excellence. Again, as we learned at the beginning, excellence is a continuously moving target. And another point here concerning documenting. Remember that documenting can include things other than the written word, such as audio or video recordings. In today's world, the written word is becoming extinct. Here are some of the analysis techniques, and again, each of these is further described in your supplemental material. For purposes of our example, the Moscow technique can be assistive in establishing packaging requirements priorities for the various Godiva products. Maybe a Godiva truffle requires more packaging cushion than a Godiva hard chocolate. Monitoring and controlling means iteratively managing and monitoring requirements change. The important aspect to remember here is to be sure and keep the requirements within the scope of the analysis that's at hand. So in our example with Godiva this evening, we are concerned with the distribution channels and how the products can be more effectively distributed to customers. So in the event a suggestion is made for offering a new Godiva product line, maybe so offering fresh lobster, for example, this would actually be outside the scope of the initiative, which is focused on product distribution. So as a part of monitoring and controlling, business analysts should always keep the initiative within the realm of its focus. Techniques for monitoring and controlling include change control boards, dependency analysis, impact analysis, and traceability matrices. For our example, a traceability matrix can be implemented for linking or tracing requirements from their origin to the deliverables that actually satisfy those requirements. Solution evaluation includes assessing whether the solution delivers the desired value. Was the right thing done? Was the right thing done correctly? Techniques with solution evaluation include examination where testing and/or demonstration is done. Hey, I might be interested in being a tester for Godiva's changes to their distribution channel, especially in the event that I get to keep some of the product. And of course, the Delphi technique, where an anonymous review is done of the distribution channel and the distribution channel processes. So we have been through all the processes pertaining to model number 1. One more process that's important is closure. The model does not list closure because with closure, the agile analysis is considered to be done. And now it's important to note that with agile itself, actually when something is done is a matter of a debate. And we know that since excellence is a continuously moving target, done is elusive. So you see why closure is omitted from the model. Maybe an extended pause is a preferable term to closure in an agile world. Nonetheless, though, closure is important. So in our example, let's assume Godiva has decided their agile analysis of the distribution channel is adequate. And so they're done for now. It is important for the analyst to prepare a lessons learned and support any transitions of the agile analysis or the results thereof into production. Techniques here include retrospectives. It's possible that the agile analysis is paused. However, the retrospectives to include what worked, what did not work, and why or why not will impart excellence to the next agile analysis for excellence. So in conclusion, today we have looked at what constitutes excellence, the continuously moving target, and the definition in models for the agile business analyst to further their excellence through their practice of core techniques. I certainly do hope that today's material helps you to impart excellence in your business analysis practice. Now, Christoph, I did remember, let's be sure to have the giveaway in a few minutes for questions. And as a reminder, I intend to respond to the questions that we do not get to today, and Christoph will include those questions with the material to be made available. You're also welcome to reach me on email at any time, and I promise I will respond to you. So Christoph, we're ready for the giveaway.
Okay.
So I know the number earlier was, did you write the number down, Christoph?
It was 37.
37. Okay, so Christoph, if you would please look at our list of participants and find the one that is number 37 down on the list, and that is who will win the book Focus by Daniel Goldman that we mentioned earlier.
And that would be Maxime Temmerman.
All right, Maxine, congratulations. So Christoph will get your contact information. You may want to put that in the chat. Christoph, how do you want to handle getting Maxine's contact information?
Okay. We will get back to you with that information for sure.
Okay, fantastic. And so Maxine, once I know where to send this book, I will send it to you, and this will be your book to enjoy. I'm confident that you will enjoy this book by Daniel Goldman. So we can take a look, Christoph, I hope, at the Mentimeter and see what kind of responses we had.
Well, I had one reaction actually, that we could only see one question, and I think it's a setting that the presenter needs to advance in the presentation.
Okay, so the first let's see here. The first question, it looks like better was the answer. The question was, during the past year, is your ability to engage and focus with work better, worse, or about the same compared to prior years? And this is what Gallup has found in their survey as well. The ability to engage and focus is actually better during the experiences that we've had during the past year. So while there's been a lot of things, a lot of change, a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty, we can see that there are some good things that have come out of that. Okay, so let's see if we can find the next question here on the Mentimeter.
Mm-hmm. Yes, now we can see the next question as well.
Okay, so hopefully people maybe can respond to this now. How often do you find yourself multitasking or thinking about too many things? Okay, I'll be interested to see what people have to say here on this one. Christoph, I'm going to get a drink of water real quick.
Yeah. I can imagine that.
So I think we can see here that in general, people sometimes even frequently, but almost always, nobody has responded that they never find themselves thinking about too many things. So what does that say? To me, that kind of says that, you know, people today try to think about too many things. And actually, that's one of the things that we're learning just even right now in the brain research that I'm engaged with here in the United States. We are actually really learning that this is something that can help society and help each individual is by cutting back on the number of things that you try to think about. You know, we have with information technology today, we have all the information we need readily accessible to us. And so since it's so readily accessible, maybe it's really not that important to try to think about all these things all the time. And that really changes kind of the way that we approach things. But we're finding that by doing this, it's better for our brain, it's healthier, and it allows us to focus more. Okay, so thank you again for your response. And I want to thank Christoph again, you, for being such a wonderful moderator with this presentation today. And so do we have any questions, Christoph?
Actually, we do. Nehat was asking, it's a pretty difficult question, my opinion, but
okay,
how to choose the best agile methodology for our work? It seems to be so many ones.
Yes, well, that is a very good question. And you're very correct. There are very many different agile models. I suggest to you that one of the two models that you've been presented with today, and I happen to like model number one better than I do number two. Try using that model, you call it whatever you want to call it, in your initiatives and see how that works for you. Now, model number two presented to you here today, it actually is a little bit, as you can see with the more bidirectional arrows between all the processes, it is a little bit more intense as far as keeping track of everything that's going on, but it is probably used for complex situations, maybe better or more so than number one would be suited to. Now, when you get to the different flavors, such as disciplined agile, I want to just say, to answer your question, and I'm not by any means, please don't misunderstand this, I'm not promoting the Project Management Institute or anything like this, but I will tell you, and it's important for us to know as business analysts, that in the project management world, through the Project Management Institute, just within the last 6 months to 1 year, they are really focusing on the disciplined agile process, okay? And that's, of course, the process that was developed by Mark Lyons. And they really believe that this is the way forward, is to use the disciplined agile process. So you may want to become familiar with that so that if you get engaged, with something, and they're using DAD, you are familiar with how that works. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, we've got another remark from Fabrizio. And he is actually requesting a box of Godiva to learn this lesson better.
Well, Fabricio, I appreciate that. And, you know, actually, just earlier this week, Godiva decided to offer free shipping on their products. Now, it was available yesterday. I'm not sure whether they still have it available today, but you may want to check that out and see how the free shipping works for you. Yes, as I mentioned during the presentation, I would be interested in being a tester for their new processes, especially if I got to keep the product itself. And you know, Godiva, this is a challenge. This is a real challenge. They're a company that's been around for a very, very long time, since back in the 1800s, if I recall, and maybe even before then. They learned about 2 years ago that they had to drastically change their distribution channel. And so here in the United States, they have pulled all their products off the retail shelf, and the only way you can get it now is through the mail order.
Mm-hmm. We've got a remark from Maxime as well, our winner for the.
Yes, hi, Maxime.
He's thanking you a lot for his present. We have a question from Ahmed. What is the core difference between a product owner and a business analyst in agile work environment?
Okay, that is an excellent question. And I will say that the line there is a little bit gray. And as you know, the IIBA has really started a focus on product ownership. Here's the way I see it, okay? And this is the way I've seen it for probably about the last couple of years. The analyst could, especially on smaller projects or less complex projects, the analyst very well could be the product owner, okay? They could serve kind of dual purpose. And I think the IIBA in general kind of recognizes this, you know. However, I also believe, especially on more complex projects, that the business analyst needs to be supplemental to the product owner and be more focused on the requirements and getting the requirements right, verifying and validating those requirements, capturing the ongoing change of those requirements in an agile fashion, and let the product owner focus more on the stakeholder management, okay? Now, again, that's just kind of my way of seeing that. On complex projects, it's very difficult, especially when you get many stakeholders involved. Like if you say, let's say you get more than a dozen stakeholders involved, especially if they have different competing priorities, it becomes a little bit challenging for an analyst to be focused on managing the requirements in an agile world, as well as managing the stakeholders. And so if you can split that up and maybe let the product owner focus more on the stakeholder management, that seems to kind of help. But yes, that's the way I see that. On smaller projects, the analyst and the product owner could actually be the same thing.
Mm-hmm. In your opinion, this is a question from Mohammed. Who is more engaging in analysis? Is it then the business analyst or the product manager?
In the analysis itself, that would be still the business analyst. And of course, the product manager, the product owner would be very interested in those things, but that would be something that the business analyst would do. And those are tools and techniques that we have in our toolbox to do those things.
Mm-hmm. Kaushik is asking which methodology is best to adhere for the IT industry.
Which methodology for the IT industry? Okay, so if you're talking about which methodology for the agile methodologies, I believe I answered that question somewhat a little bit earlier. IT, of course, is one of the industry that changes probably more than any other industry, or at least as much as any industry. And IT actually, it serves as a catalyst for the changes that occur in other industries. So you really, again, it depends on the initiative, it depends on the project, but I suggest that you use either model number 1 or model number 2 that we showed today. And then you also be very familiar with disciplined agile in particular, and then some of the other things that we also mentioned. Scrum, of course, has been around. It's widely used. It's good. But again, the focus going forward, at least from the Project Management Institute's perspective, is going to be on disciplined agile.
Mm-hmm. We've got another question from Deborah. When your work environment encourages agile and still prioritizes on documentation, which agile model or approach best suits?
Well, again, the documentation is a part of what we're going to do in any one of the, in any one of the agile methodologies. I would suggest to you that agile, as we know, even from the Agile Manifesto, puts less emphasis on the documentation. And one of the things that seems to be a challenge, I know it's a challenge for me, and it seems to be a challenge that I encounter with all the analysts that I speak with, or at least most of them, is this whole notion of documenting. For one thing, people don't want to take the time to read anymore. For another thing, people, believe it or not, really aren't capable sometimes of even reading. So think of alternative ways to document things, such as audio and video. So, to answer your question, I don't really know if there's any one particular way. I think about, Kanban, but then again, with that, you're putting a lot of documentation up on the board and moving things around all the time. I just would suggest that you just be aware that there are alternative ways to document things other than the written word, and take advantage of those things other than just always using the written word. So that might not have been just a real direct answer to the question, but that's my best answer, Christoph, to that question.
Okay. Anthony is asking if the hybrid model is more effective than the Agile and Waterfall model.
Well, that's a great question. And I think it depends on the initiative. It also depends a lot of time on the culture of the people that you're working with. One of the things that I find is that when you're working with stakeholders who are older and are used to Agile, used to Waterfall, it becomes much more difficult to impart that Agile way to them. And so a lot of times what I've experienced, and I know other people have experienced the same thing, it's an easier sell to use a hybrid approach, to just say, you know what, we're gonna do a hybrid approach here. We're not gonna say we're doing away with Waterfall. And then when you go through the model, like even the models we showed today, or the discipline model, or whatever agile model you choose, you actually sort of remove the waterfall as you go along through the hybrid, so to speak, initiative. And then the initiative actually becomes agile. The people are very appreciative because they're getting product delivered to them right along, and they don't really realize that you have effectively removed the waterfall from the procedure. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Some, as is the case with everything, there's always going to be exceptions. Especially in government organizations, they are so ingrained and have to do certain processes a certain way that you may not always be able to even use hybrid. You may have to go with their waterfall because that's the only way that they're going to work with you. But even then, there is nothing stopping you from saying, as you're going along in that waterfall process, there's nothing stopping you from asserting that, hey, if we did it this way, see how that could benefit us, and helping them to understand the value of Agile.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that answer. We have another question from Sarche. What is the connection between focus and engagement on one hand and Agile and business analysis on the other hand? Is it that Agile allows for more focus and engagement and therefore excellence?
Well, Agile does allow for more focus and engagement and excellence. Yes, you're exactly right about that. Now, Christoph, could you tell me, that was kind of a long question. Can you tell me the first part of that question again?
Yeah, sure. So what is the connection between focus and engagement on one hand and Agile and business analysis on the other hand?
Okay, focus and engagement on one hand, okay? If you're not able to focus on something, how can you be fully engaged? Okay, if you're thinking about 10 different things at one time, how can you really be fully engaged on one thing? Okay, so that's how focus and engagement happens. Now, the other part of that question is agile and business analysis. Because we are agile and we recognize that things are always changing as we approach excellence, excellence is a moving target that we're constantly chasing. It frees us up. It actually frees our focus up to be able to focus on one thing at a time and change that focus later on. So we can say at this time, when these things were known, we focused on this, and this was the answer for excellence. But we know now that since we learned these additional things or the environment has changed, then we need to make adjustments as well to continue to pursue that excellence. So that's how focus fits in with engagement and business analysis. Okay, I hope that was a fairly clear answer.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Jeffrey. Is Agile project business management another name of change management? He sees all principles in Agile already exist long time in the change management domain.
Well, yes, that's true. But now remember, change management is one of the tools that you have in your toolbox for monitoring and controlling the requirements. Okay, you don't want to just have the requirements change at will. You still want to be able to manage and control those requirements. And change management is one of those tools in that toolbox, in that monitoring and controlling process that we looked at in the model. And when you get the supplemental material, be sure to look in that section and read more about that. And I think that'll really help clear the answer to your question up even more.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see that we are already a little overdue. So we will send you all the remaining questions. So if you still have questions for Trent, you can still send them via the chat. And then we would like to thank you very much, Trent, for this interesting session, full with the new insights on the Agile analysis. The presentation slides, they will be sent out afterwards, as well as the recording. And by following this session, you are also eligible for the CDUs, which qualify for recertification for the IIBA certificates. In the name of the IIBA Brussels chapter, we would like to offer Trent this certificate of appreciation for giving this session and sharing his knowledge on the Agile analysis for excellence.
Christoph, thank you so much. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for the privilege of sharing this with you all today. And please feel free to reach out to me at any time.
Okay, you're welcome. So I would also like your feedback on this session. So if you can go to menti.com, and the website is online. I will try also to put it in the chat window as well. So if you can give us your feedback as well. Then the last thing that I would like to mention is our next events which are coming up. So next to our weekly online BA Cafe, where you can know the BAs from all over the world in an informal chat. Among them also our speaker of today, Trent, who is a regular on the BA Cafe. We have on June the 8th a session on value design, which will be our first session in French with Cédric Berger. And on June 17th, we have another session on collaboration with John Fraser, Will Pitchers, and Shane Lacani. And To close up, we thank you for attending our webinar, and we hope to see you soon again. Thank you.